In a world of rigid equations, Professor Isla Vance never accounted for Cassia. A brilliant student with a watching silence, she cracked Isla's precise life open. Their connection was a dangerous variable, solved in stolen kisses and whispered secrets. Forced to choose between love and ruin, Isla made a devastating calculation. But some equations are never truly balanced, and a ghost from her past returns, demanding a final answer. Can they solve for a forever that was once forbidden? Or is their love a proof that was always destined to fail? For more tales of women in love, your subscription is always appreciated. The geometry of want. The first time Professor Isla Vance saw her, it was through a haze of autumn sunlight and the dusty chalk motes floating in the air of her advanced calculus classroom. Isla, at 29, had crafted a life of impeccable precision. Her world was one of defined theorems, elegant proofs, and a personal life kept so private it was nearly invisible. She was a silhouette against a stark whiteboard, known for her brilliance and her unapproachable demeanor. The new student was a variable she hadn't accounted for. Her name was Cassia Reed, a transfer student in her final year. She didn't sit in the back to hide. She chose a seat directly to Isla's right, near the window, where the light caught the deep auburn of her hair. She was quiet, but her silence was not empty. It was intense, full of a watching intelligence that made Isla's carefully ordered pulse stutter. For weeks, their interaction was a dance of glances and academic rigor. Cassia's questions after class were sharp, insightful, delving beyond the textbook. Isla found herself preparing for lectures with a new fervor, anticipating the subtle curve of Cassia's smile when a particularly complex problem was solved. The shift happened on a rain-slicked evening. Isla was working late in her office, grading papers. A soft knock interrupted the silence. Cassia stood there, drenched from the storm, clutching a textbook. "Professor Vance. I left my notebook. I need it to study." Her composure was gone. Isla saw it then, the vulnerability under the fierce intelligence. "Come in," she said, her voice softer than intended. "You're soaked." She offered Cassia a towel from her gym bag and a cup of tea from her thermos. Their fingers brushed during the exchange, and a current, sharp and undeniable, passed between them. The small office seemed to shrink, the air growing thick with everything unsaid. "You see it too, don't you?" Cassia's voice was a whisper, barely audible over the drumming rain. She wasn't talking about calculus. Isla's professional walls crumbled. "I can't," she breathed, but it was a plea, not a refusal. Cassia stepped closer. The scent of rain on her skin, the look in her eyes. It was an equation Isla couldn't solve with logic. "This isn't about a student and a teacher right now," Cassia murmured, her gaze dropping to Isla's lips. "It's just you and me." Isla's resistance shattered. She closed the infinitesimal distance between them, her hand cupping Cassia's damp cheek. The first kiss was a collision, a desperate, hungry meeting of lips that tasted of rain, mint tea, and years of suppressed longing. It was less a kiss and more a claiming, a silent admission that the line had been irrevocably crossed. Isla's back pressed against her desk, papers scattering, as Cassia's hands tangled in her hair, pulling her closer, deepening the kiss with a fervor that stole Isla's breath. It was reckless, dangerous, and utterly intoxicating. They broke apart, gasping, foreheads resting together, the world outside the office door ceasing to exist. That kiss began a secret, stolen season. Their affair was conducted in whispers and shadows. Late nights in Isla's office with the door locked, their bodies learning the geometry of each other on the worn Persian rug. Furtive kisses in the empty library stacks, hidden by centuries of stories. Weekend trips to distant cities where they could be anonymous, where Isla could hold Cassia's hand in a movie theater and kiss her in a restaurant booth without fear. The physical connection was a conflagration. Isla, who had always been so controlled, was undone by the feel of Cassia's skin under her palms. They explored each other with a hungry curiosity, learning the secrets that made the other gasp. In the sanctuary of Isla's apartment, with the blinds drawn, they would spend hours in bed. Isla would map the freckles on Cassia's shoulders with her tongue, and Cassia would arch into her touch, whispering Isla's name like a prayer, her hands clutching at the sheets as waves of pleasure crashed over her. The world narrowed to the space of a mattress, to the sound of their shared breaths and the feeling of their bodies moving together in a perfect, ancient rhythm. But the outside world was a constant threat. A suspicious glance from a colleague, Cassier's friends wondering where she disappeared to, the agonizing pretense of formality in the classroom. The weight of the secret began to wear on them, fueling arguments and a deep, aching fear. The inevitable almost happened. A fellow teacher noticed Cassier's car consistently parked near Isla's apartment building. Confronted, Isla made the most painful decision of her life. She ended it. Brutally and publicly, in her office, with the door open. She told Cassier it was a mistake, a moment of weakness, and that it could never happen again. The devastation on Cassier's face would haunt Isla for months. Cassier graduated, leaving Oak Creek Academy and Isla behind. Isla resigned at the end of the semester, unable to bear the ghosts in the hallways. She moved to a different city, took a job in private research, and tried to forget. But the memory of Cassier was a constant ache, a phantom limb. A year and a half later, a letter arrived. No return address, but Isla knew the handwriting. It was a single sentence: "The equation is still unbalanced without you." It was all Isla needed. She tracked Cassier down. She was living in a bright, bohemian apartment in a city known for its art, working at a gallery. When Isla showed up at her door, the air left the room. Cassier was different. More assured, her pain forged into strength. "You broke my heart," she said, her voice steady. "I was trying to protect you," Isla replied, her own voice raw. "I never asked for your protection. I asked for your love." This time, there were no rules to break, no titles to hide behind. It was just two women, standing in the wreckage of their past, choosing each other. Isla moved in 3 months later. Their love was no longer a secret to be kept but a truth to be celebrated. They traveled, built a home, and loved each other with a maturity and depth that their stolen beginning could never have allowed. Isla learned to be open, to be soft. Cassier learned to trust again. On a warm summer evening, in the garden of the home they shared, surrounded by a small circle of chosen family and friends who knew their story, they were married. Cassier wore a simple linen dress, her auburn hair down around her shoulders. Isla wore a tailored suit, her eyes never leaving her bride. As they exchanged vows they had written themselves, they spoke of unexpected variables, of solving for the unknown, of finding a love that was both theorem and proof. When the officiant pronounced them married, Isla didn't wait. She pulled Cassier into a deep, passionate kiss, one that held the memory of their first desperate kiss, the pain of their separation, and the profound joy of their hard-won forever. It was a kiss that promised a lifetime of solving life's equations together, side by side. Final chapter. The garden was quiet now, the laughter of their friends a soft echo in the twilight. Strands of fairy lights glowed like captured stars above them, and the scent of night-blooming jasmine hung heavy in the warm air. Isla watched Cassier, her wife, as she spoke softly with a friend, the simple gold band on her finger catching the light. A deep, settled peace lived in Isla's chest where there had once been only a hollow ache. The frantic, desperate geometry of their want had finally found its equilibrium in the quiet calculus of their shared life. They had mapped the coordinates of their happiness together, building a home that was no longer a hiding place but a sanctuary. Cassier turned and caught her staring. A smile, the same one that had once made Isla's pulse stutter in a dusty classroom, now filled her with a profound and steady warmth. Cassier walked over, her hand finding Isla's with an easy familiarity. "You're thinking about theorems again, Professor Vance," she teased, her voice soft. "Just one," Isla said, lifting their joined hands to her lips. "I was proving that two parallel lines, given enough time and courage, can not only meet, but become a single, unbreakable point." Cassier's smile softened. She leaned in, her forehead resting against Isla's, just as it had in a rain-soaked office a lifetime ago. But this time, there was no fear, no desperate urgency, only the sure, quiet certainty of their forever. "QED," Cassier whispered against her lips. And as they kissed, Isla knew with absolute certainty that every variable, every moment of pain and joy, had been necessary to solve for this one, perfect answer. Their story wasn't just about a grand passion. It was the elegant proof of a love that had chosen itself, twice, and would forever be the sum of its parts. Together,